Thousands of Canadians are out to protest vaccine mandates and forced vaccines, but of course, the media and our politicians continue to belittle them and ignore them. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show. Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Monday. I am back in studio now, and I feel like it's sort of a game of Survivor at my house right now. I am the last person in my household to not have COVID. So my husband came down with COVID over the weekend, and it's not pleasant. For sure, it is an unpleasant illness. He's got a sore throat, the same as what my mother was complaining about last week. But you know, I'm sort of happy that they're getting Omicron. They're going to have the antibodies against it, and hopefully the more people that get this COVID, get this strain, and can get through it, the closer we will be to just having an end of the pandemic. I think we're all just very, very sick of it. And you could see this happening as Canadians were spilling into the streets over the weekend to protest in favor of freedoms. Huge, huge freedom rallies across the country. This, of course, should have been the number one news story every time you turned on a television or any newspaper you picked up, anytime you turned on the radio. But instead, you know, of course, we just barely saw anyone even noticing it. Very little coverage of these massive protests across the country. So we've got some clips. There were people out in Toronto, in Vancouver, in Montreal. Canadians gathered by the thousands in various cities on Sunday to voice their opposition to lockdown measures, including vaccine passports and mandatory COVID-19 shots. By the way, the government in Quebec is coming out today announcing at 3 o'clock that they are going to unroll some kind of plan to do a forced shot, a forced vaccine for those who have held out. That is something that every Canadian should be watching and should be concerned about, and frankly should be speaking out about, because that is absolutely insane. Here is what these freedom rallies looked like. And by the way, this was part of a worldwide effort. These rallies took place all over the world, and they were basically in every city in Canada. We've got footage from Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. They were also in Calgary. They were in Fredericton. They were gathering anywhere there were people. There were people gathering and protesting against the insane government overreach and reaction to COVID-19. So here's what that looked like.
Even the vaccinated are tired of your lies, your double talk, and moving targets for freedom. The people are calling for your resignation.
And in addition to protesters out on the street, we saw the Freedom Convoy, the truckers in Canada organizing and starting their descent. They're driving across the country from Vancouver all the way to Ottawa to demand an end to the vaccine mandate. So the Freedom Convoy 2022 protest comes after Ottawa enacted a policy requiring truck drivers to show their proof of COVID-19 shots at the border, or they will be turned away. In an email shown to True North, convoy organizers say truckers will begin a slow roll from multiple border points on January 23rd and head towards Ottawa. They hope that slowing down major transportation routes will garner attention for their cause. And we have clips from all over. So they started in Vancouver. They're making their way all the way across the country. So we have clips from Vancouver, Langley, Smithers, BC, Surrey, some from the other side of the country, Amherst, Nova Scotia, Brooks, Alberta, Chilliwack, and Abbotsford, British Columbia. Lots of images of truckers showing their discontent and their displeasure with these heavy-handed vaccine mandates. So here's what that looks like. no surprise, what the media is picking up on is the opposite. So here's a story over in Post Media about the Canadian Trucking Alliance condemning protests by unvaccinated truckers. So they found a group who were more than happy to have forced vaccines, and they were condemning those who didn't want them. So the Canadian Trucking Alliance issued a statement on Saturday saying it does not support and strongly disapproves of protests staged on public roads, highways, and bridges. Alliance president says that both Canada and the United States have cross-border vaccination rules in place, and truckers must adapt and comply. So no sympathy for the individual truckers who have their own moral concerns and don't want to get vaccinated. Instead, they are jumping on the side of the fancy people, of the politicians and the elites in the media, saying, no, they can't do this. This is a bad idea. And the pile-on continues against these truck drivers because they raised over $3 million through a GoFundMe campaign. So Canadians reaching into their pockets, supporting these truckers and their freedom and their individual say whether or not they want to have something injected in their body. They raised $3 million through the site GoFundMe, and GoFundMe says that they're going to hold the funds until the organizers are able to provide details on how the funds will be distributed. Of course, GoFundMe is just like every other left-wing tech organization, meddling in where they shouldn't, shutting down free speech, and in this case, donations that people are giving out of their own pocket to an organization or to a cause. And for some reason, GoFundMe is getting in the middle. It's despicable. Lots of negative takes on Twitter. Unsurprisingly, Gerald Butt, Justin Trudeau's best friend and advisor, says this: an Alberta separatist has collected almost $1 million on GoFundMe to support trucker protests. Where will the money go? So see how this sort of wagging the dog takes place. Gerald Butt is the puppet master. He puts something out on Twitter, and then lo and behold, that's what the media pick up on. Even GoFundMe follows up on that by saying that they're going to hold the funding. Another really terrible take from a Trudeau staffer here. So here's a guy called Alex Wallinstead, who, if you recall, he used to be Justin Trudeau's comms person, press secretary. He was the one that lied to the media about saying that Trudeau was not into pheno, when of course he was. And then he got shuffled out. Now he's working for some other liberal politician. And he tweets this: just terrible. This is the third grocery store I've been to this week that's been empty. Where are the pumpkins? And he shows a picture of a very well-stocked grocery store. Looks like a very fancy, probably downtown Ottawa organic grocery store there. No problem for him. And so he just likes to denigrate anyone complaining about it. Now, of course, we have anyone who's been to a grocery store, or anyone who's even just been on social media, has seen lots and lots of pictures that look like this. Here's a couple of examples you can see on the screen for those watching. Lots of people tweeting empty grocery stores, empty shelves in grocery stores. We've seen it throughout the pandemic, but particularly bad in the last few weeks here and last few days especially. So this one guy says, oh, look, my grocery store in Ottawa looks just perfectly fine, and basically mocking anyone who has been dealing with the reality that the supply chain is completely in a mess, in ruins, and a lot of stuff, a lot of shelves are empty. A lot of people aren't able to get the supplies that they need. He eventually deleted this tweet because he was so ashamed by accidentally telling the world his own elitist opinion. Basically just, everybody shut up, ignore the fact that my government is contributing to this. Everything's just fine. Look at my fancy grocery store. Everything's looking good. The reality is that when you force truckers, when you force people who are in the middle of the supply chain to comply to an unethical rule that they don't want to get vaccinated. Not all of them want to get vaccinated. Some of them have recovered from COVID. They have the antibodies. Some of them might have had an adverse reaction. We don't know exactly why they don't want to get vaccinated, but that's their choice. We live in a free society. That's their choice. They're truckers. They're not really interacting with the public. They're sitting in a truck by themselves for the most part. And maybe when they're interacting with people, they're outside where COVID doesn't spread as much. So they have a very valid reason not to get vaccinated. Trudeau's putting in this heavy-handed policy, forcing them to get vaccinated. His staff are mocking people who are complaining about the supply chain disruptions that are happening. And look, here's a story in Global explaining exactly why this is a problem. Canadians may see less food in grocery stores, but experts say it's no need to panic. Of course, Global throws in what the experts say, but the important takeaway from this piece here is that the Canadian Trucking Alliance estimates that as many as 32,000 Canadian and American cross-border truckers may be taken off the roads due to the mandates. That represents 20% of the 160,000 truckers total, and that's in addition to nearly 23,000 drivers the industry was short before the mandate. So you have an industry where not a lot of people want to work. It's a tough job by yourself for long hours and on roads, often dangerous conditions, trying to meet deadlines. lines. It's a tough job. And on top of that, you're putting in this mandate that shouldn't even affect them. You could have a conversation about requiring people at hospitals that are engaging with vulnerable people about making sure that they're vaccinated, making sure maybe teachers are vaccinated, who keep the schools open, making sure that public-facing people get vaccinated. But a trucker is not a public. Yeah, he's doing cross-border transportation, but he's in a truck by himself. So the idea that you would force these people to get mandated, it doesn't even make sense. The science isn't even there. He's sitting in a truck by himself, and you're forcing an industry that's already has shortages and has issues. You're artificially making it 20% fewer employees there. So way to go, Justin Trudeau and your idiotic staffers mocking this whole situation. Meanwhile, you're the ones that are causing it. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the horrible media takes. So aside from usually ignoring the issue, ignoring the big protests, ignoring the trucker convoys, this time the media is sort of piling on, is talking about how it's a bad strategy. It's a bad strategy that these truckers are protesting against the vaccine mandate. So here's the CTV story. Truckers should have been more prepared for the vaccine mandate, experts say. So they speak to someone who's a professor of the School of Public Administration at Dalhousie University, questioning the wisdom of the truckers' lobbying strategy. Given how firmly Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has staked out his position in favor of vaccine mandates during last year's federal election, Trudeau really drilled in on putting the pressure on for vaccines, this professor said. If some companies are making an effort and others aren't, I don't get it. It's another thing, again, if companies are really resisting it, as though the government doesn't have the right to do this. So she's basically just saying that this is a bad issue. This is a bad issue for truckers. They should just really find a different issue because Trudeau is so passionate about it. So there's no point in even fighting it. And obviously, the government has the right to force people to inject something that they oppose to into their bodies. That's basically what she's just saying. Like, what a dumb issue. Really, really bad take. And in the same story, we've got another bad take. This is an individual called Andrew Steele, who's a vice president of consulting at Strategy Corp, so basically just a lobbyist. And they said that polls show that public opinion is overwhelmingly in favor of strong vaccine requirements for essential workers, and that companies and trade groups need to read the room. If you're making a public relations or government strategy, you should align with public opinion. Governments, especially in a high-stakes, massive crisis like this, don't run in the face of public opinion and do the opposite. So again, basically just saying, look, this is popular and therefore you don't get any rights. You just shut your mouth. You don't get any rights. We're just going to do exactly what we want. And if you're protesting, you should probably read the room. You should just read the room and do exactly what Justin Trudeau wants you to do. And the final worst take, this is going to end up on Fake News Friday for sure. It's just so stupid. So the CBC, instead of covering the issue, instead of looking at the issue of why these truckers are protesting, the CBC just completely made up their own reason why the truckers are protesting. Everyone knows that the truckers are protesting against the vaccine mandates, except for the CBC, who spun this story, invented this story, that the truckers are actually protesting dangerous conditions on BC highways. So here it reads, hundreds of people joined a convoy led by truckers in BC protesting hazardous road conditions on the province's highways. The rally, organized by the West Coast Trucking Association, made its way from Surrey to Vancouver Saturday in hopes of bringing awareness of the icy and dangerous road conditions that truckers have to deal with in the winter season. And then they find some guy who's like confused about what the protest is actually about to say like, oh yeah, we're just protesting the icy roads. We're these Canadian truckers who are protesting winter. Basically, we're protesting acts of God. Sometimes we're driving and it's snowing and we want the plow to be there, but the plow isn't there yet. And so they concocted this whole idea that this is what the protests were actually about. Give me a break, CBC. This is just such a bad take, and it's obviously not true. As soon as they posted this dumb story on social media, it got ripped to shreds by everybody saying, are you serious? This is not why they're protesting. This is not why they're protesting. Nobody's out there protesting winter. They're protesting Trudeau and the heavy-handed vaccine mandates. And so they had to add this little correction at the bottom saying, it is different from another rally that left Vancouver for Ottawa protesting vaccine mandates on Sunday. And so, of course, they added that after getting ridiculed because everybody knew that the protests were not about the icy roads, or the truckers aren't protesting winter. You know, maybe one guy was out there protesting winter. Everyone else was out there protesting the vaccine mandates. And the CBC wrote the story about the one guy and pretended it was everyone. And then afterwards pretended that they knew the difference. And they just had to clarify, oh, this is a different rally than the big one that you've probably been seeing lots of images about on social media and you know, through your friends online. So really, really stupid, idiotic take by the CBC. But what do you expect? I mean, they're there to cover for Justin Trudeau, and that is a pretty big way to cover for him. Well, look, anyone who's paying attention knows that there are mounting concerns, and more Canadians are voicing their concerns. They're standing up. They're saying enough is enough. We're going to get through this pandemic without a vaccine. You cannot force us to do this anymore. Your science doesn't add up. Your logic doesn't make sense. We're tired of it. Enough is enough. And it's great to see so many Canadians standing together and standing against this tyrannical government. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show.